Today we're going to talk about the A4988 and how to install it on the MKS Gen version 1.4. So I needed to explain a couple of things. First of all, we have our stepper ports. We have our X, our Y, Z, E0, and E1. Now, as you can tell, there's no jumpers here, but in order to get the highest degree of step for the A4988, which is 1/16 of a step, we have to add all the jumpers. So I'm going to do that for you real quick. Now keep in mind, we need to also be able to locate where our pins are going to need to go for the A4988 so we place it in correctly and don't damage our stepper driver board. So in a moment I'm going to flip this board over so you can actually see the underside, and I'll explain a little bit more about it from the silkscreen letters. Okay, this is the underside of the MKS Gen version 1.4. Keep in mind that the power supply is in this direction. So we're going to look for the pins on the silkscreen, and what we have here is the enable pin, then we have our ground pin, and then we have our direction pin. So now we know where the pins are. I'll show you the A4988 and how that sets up for the MKS Gen version 1.4. This is the top side of the A4988. Now keep in mind we have a potentiometer here. Then we have cooling fins for the chip below. And in a moment I'll show you the underside and what the pins look like. Okay, here's the underside of the A4988. As you can see, the enable pin is right here. Then we have our ground pin and our direction pin. These are going to be useful for when we're putting it on the MKS Gen version 1.4. Okay, now that we know that the enable pin is located right here, closest to the power supply, we have to double check to see what we have underneath here. So I'm going to rotate this over. And as you can see, our direction and ground are here, so we're going to rotate it this way, then flip it over so we're in the right position, and then we're going to put it over the port pins and apply a little bit of pressure. Now as you can tell, it's installed, so we're going to next install our stepper and the X port over here. And in order to load the firmware, we need to connect the big side of the serial USB to our port here, and then we want to take the small side and connect it to the computer, and you're going to hear a beep. And in a moment I'll show you in Marlin how we're going to load the firmware. Okay, we're going to open up marlin-bugfix-2.0.x. Then we're going to open up the Marlin subfolder, then the source folder, and then we're going to open up the core folder. Now what we want to do is open up boards.h, and we want to search on MKS. And what we have here are several different MKS boards, but the one we're interested in is board_MKS_Gen_13, because that applies to MKS Gen version 1.4 and or version 1.3. So we're going to copy this. We're going to close out of here. We're going to go up a directory, then another directory. Then we're going to open up the Arduino file for Marlin. Okay, we're going to select the configuration.h tab. We're going to do a search on motherboard. And what we have is board_ramps_14_EFB. So we're going to highlight that and paste what we just copied. So we're going to have board_MKS_Gen_13. Next, we're going to search for the A4988. And what we have here is a bunch of different stepper drivers that we could possibly use, but in this case we're only using the A4988, so it's usually defaulted to that down below. But I'm just going to show you for an example how to set it up when you have mixed stepper drivers. So if you remove the comment for X, remove the comment for Y, remove the comment for Z, and then we'll do E0. So those comments are now removed, so they're available to be modified. Now, seeing how we already have A4988 connected to our X stepper driver position, let's try doing the DRV8825 on the Y stepper driver. So we're going to paste it there. We are not actually using it, but I'm doing this as an example. Now, if we were to go to, let's say, max steps, so let's do a search on max. So what we're looking for is default access steps per unit. Currently X is defaulted for 80 incremental steps for the A4988, but because we have Y specified for the DRV8825, which does 32 steps, which is twice the number of steps that we get with the A4988, we need to double 80 to 160. And then in order to load the firmware, we need to go over to Tools, and we need to make sure that we have the right chipset selected, which is the Mega 2560. Next, we need to make sure that we have a port selected, which is COM port 3. So we're good there. So we're going to click on the upload button, which will compile and then upload our changes to the MKS Gen version 1.4. So here we go, and in a moment I'll show you in Pronterface how to test it. Okay, off camera I connected the power cables, so I'm going to plug it in. So keep in mind not to touch the board when it's energized, because it's not safe. Okay, now it's energized, so keep your hands away from it. So in a second in Pronterface, I'll show you how to actually test it. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is open up the Pronterface executable. We then want to connect to the MKS Gen version 1.4. And then over here we have our controls for movement. So we have 1/10 of a millimeter, 1 millimeter, 10 millimeters, and 100 millimeters. So I'm going to move it 10 millimeters so you can see in the positive direction. Now I'm going to move it 100 millimeters in the positive direction. So if you like my tutorial, please press the like button and subscribe, and thank you for your time.